All right, strap in, everybody. We're going deep today. Deep into, well, let's just say, some pretty uncharted territory.
Sounds intriguing.
Oh, it is. We're diving into the predictions of this Polish psychic, Krzysztof Jackowski, all based on what he's been saying on his YouTube channel.
Okay, so right off the bat, we're dealing with a pretty unique source here.
Definitely. And that's what makes it so fascinating. I mean, who doesn't love a good prediction, right?
Yeah.
But we're going beyond just listing them out.
Right.
We're going to look at what he's saying and then try to connect the dots to what's actually happening in the world right now, geopolitics and all that.
Yeah, trying to see if there's any actual relevance or connection to the current global landscape.
Exactly. With a healthy dose of skepticism, of course.
Of course.
So to kick things off, let's go back in time a bit. Back in the 90s, Jackowski was involved in this murder case in Poland in a town called Zambro.
Yeah, a murdered tax official. This case was huge in Poland.
And it's what kind of put Jackowski on the map.
It did. I mean, what's striking is the level of detail he gave about the crime. He described the location where they found the body, what the victim was doing before he was murdered, even the gender of a witness who saw the people who did it running away.
All this, and the kicker is, he got all this information just from looking at the victim's notebook.
That's what he claimed, yeah.
Pretty wild, right? But wait, there's more.
There's always more.
So during that investigation, Jackowski was driving to Zambro with a police officer. And get this, he makes this prediction about the officer himself.
Yeah, a chilling one. He basically predicted that this officer would die in a car accident years later.
And he even gave specific details, like it would happen at night on a straight road.
And tragically, years later, that's exactly what happened.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, about just, what kind of abilities this guy might actually have.
It definitely raises some questions about, precognition, intuition, those sorts of things.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's a taste of his past, but now let's jump into the present, and more specifically, his predictions about what's happening on the world stage.
All right, let's get global.
So one figure that keeps popping up in Jackowski's recent predictions is Klaus Schwab.
The World Economic Forum guy.
Yeah, exactly. And Jackowski believes that Schwab's idea of a new world order, that whole concept of global governance and centralized control, he says it's starting to crumble.
He's saying that Schwab's plans are meeting resistance, even losing support from some key players.
That's what he's claiming. And here's where it gets really interesting. He links this decline of the New World Order to the rise of the BRICS nations.
You're talking Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
That's the group. And Jackowski sees them as a major counterforce to this whole global governance agenda.
A shift in the global balance of power.
Right. He's basically saying that the BRICS countries are gaining more and more economic and political clout, and that's directly challenging that traditional Western dominance that, some people associate with the New World Order.
So he's suggesting a move towards a more multipolar world with power distributed more evenly.
Yeah, that's the picture he's painting. And get this, he also throws Donald Trump back into the mix.
Oh, this should be good.
He actually predicts that Trump will return to the political scene, and that this is going to further escalate tensions between the West and the BRICS nations.
Especially given Trump's, let's say, colorful history when it comes to trade with those countries.
Oh, yeah. I mean, remember all that talk about tariffs on BRICS goods if they ditch the U.S. dollar?
It's not just about political ideology anymore. It's about control over the entire global financial system.
And that's where things could get really messy. What's crazy is Jackowski doesn't think even if Trump gets back in power, he'll be able to change the course of things.
Like trying to stop a runaway train?
Exactly. He sees the tension between these global forces as basically irreversible at this point.
That's a pretty bleak outlook.
Yeah, it is. And believe it or not, it gets even darker. Jackowski goes on to predict a full-blown world war in 2025.
He called it a cursed year, right?
It's chilling, isn't it? He describes this potential war as being triggered by some kind of strategic provocation, maybe aimed at Russia, and leading to just, widespread devastation.
A pretty terrifying scenario, especially given what's already happening in the world.
So, just to be clear, are these provocations by Russia or against Russia?
Honestly, that's where it gets a bit murky. He doesn't come right out and say who starts it, only that it's strategic and that it has the potential to blow up into a global conflict really fast.
And that ambiguity, it just adds to the whole unsettling feeling, doesn't it? But then on top of all that, he throws another curveball.
Hit me with it.
He predicts a nuclear detonation, but not like the ones we usually imagine.
What, like a rogue state launching a nuke?
Not even that. This one, he says, happens in the ocean. And here's the kicker. He doesn't see a clear perpetrator.
So who sets it off? Terrorists? Some secret organization?
That's the scary part. He actually suggests it could be non-state actors, people who've somehow gotten their hands on nuclear capabilities.
Talk about a nightmare scenario.
Right. It just throws this whole new level of uncertainty into the mix. And then, of course, there's Putin.
Ah, Putin. Always a wild card.
Jackowski portrays him as this, like, master strategist, someone playing a double game with everyone.
Taking advantage of the global chaos.
Exactly. And he believes that the West doesn't really understand Putin's motives or his end game, which, if you believe Jackowski, is just fueling the fire even more.
Adding fuel to the fire that's already threatening to engulf the world, basically.
That's a good way to put it. So, wow, we've covered a lot of ground already. Superpowers clashing, Trump potentially back in the picture, a possible world war, a mysterious nuclear explosion, and Putin pulling strings in the shadows.
And this is just the beginning.
Right. We've just scratched the surface of what Jackowski is predicting. He also gets into things like economic collapse, climate disasters, and even spiritual awakenings.
Sounds like we've got a lot more to unpack.
We definitely do.
Yeah.
But before we go any further, let's just take a breath for a second and think about what we've just discussed.
Yeah, it's a lot to process, for sure.
Remember, we're not saying we believe all of this or that it's definitely going to happen.
Of course not.
We're just laying it all out there, seeing what this guy's saying, and trying to figure out if any of it makes sense in the context of what's going on in the world.
Right. It's about exploring different perspectives, even if they seem a bit out there.
Exactly. And it's also about encouraging you, our listeners, to think for yourselves, to be critical, to question everything you hear, and to draw your own conclusions.
Because ultimately, the future is what we make it.
Well said. Okay, so we've waded through some pretty intense geopolitical predictions from Jackowski, but it's not all about like World War III and global power struggles.
Right.
He also gets into some pretty dire predictions about natural disasters and economic upheaval.
Yeah, and it's interesting how he kind of connects these events. It's not just like, oh, this disaster is going to happen and then this other disaster. He sees it all as very interconnected, almost like a chain reaction.
A domino effect.
Exactly. Like, he talks about this period of, really extreme climate change with more floods, droughts, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, all becoming more frequent and more severe.
And he's saying these disasters, they're going to further destabilize things.
That's his take, yeah. Leading to more scarcity of resources, political tensions boiling over.
So it's like one disaster just kind of feeds into the next, creating this like downward spiral.
Exactly. And then on top of all that, he predicts this massive financial crisis.
Oh yeah, he talked about that. The one that's supposed to like rock the global economy.
Right. And he thinks it'll be caused by, a bunch of things converging all at once. Unsustainable debt, currencies being manipulated, people losing faith in the whole system.
So it's not just like physical disasters, but the very foundation of, modern society that's at risk.
That's what he's saying. It's almost like he's describing this perfect storm where all these economic vulnerabilities come crashing together with the geopolitical instability.
It's, it's not exactly a rosy picture, is it? Does he offer any hope at all amidst all this doom and gloom?
He does hint at a possible silver lining.
Okay, I'm listening.
He calls it a global spiritual awakening.
Oh, interesting. What does that even mean?
Well, he's suggesting that as humanity grapples with all these crises, wars, disasters, economic collapse, there's going to be this shift in consciousness.
A shift? Like how?
Like people reevaluating their values, searching for meaning beyond material possessions, that kind of thing.
So it's like a collective wake-up call.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. He's saying it'll force us to rethink our priorities, to find a way of life that's more sustainable, more just...
Okay. But is that, enough? I mean, can that really counter all the really bad stuff he's predicting?
It's a good question. Can individual transformation really translate into, collective action that actually changes things?
Right.
Jackowski seems to think so, but it's a big challenge for sure.
It makes you wonder, though, if enough people change, maybe it could, ripple outward, influence communities, even whole countries.
Yeah, it's like, can that individual spark ignite a global flame?
Okay, so we've got these power struggles, climate change, economic meltdown, and maybe, possibly, a spiritual awakening. What about technology? What role does that play in all of this?
Oh, Jackowski has some pretty fascinating and sometimes kind of scary predictions about technology.
I bet. So does he think technology is going to save us or destroy us?
He actually sees it as both, like a double-edged sword. He talks a lot about artificial intelligence.
AI. Yeah, everyone's talking about AI these days.
And he acknowledges its potential, right? Like it
Nah.
could help us solve complex problems, automate tasks, make scientific breakthroughs.
Sure. But it could also, like, become Skynet and take over the world.
He definitely touches on that fear, yeah.
Yeah.
That AI could become uncontrollable, even surpass human intelligence.
That's not very comforting.
It's not. And he's also concerned about how technology can, like, widen the gap between.
The digital divide.
Exactly. He worries that access to technology is going to become a major source of inequality, which could lead to social unrest and, even more division in society.
It's like the people who have access to technology get ahead, and the people who don't fall further behind.
Right, and that gap just keeps getting wider.
So we've got AI, the digital divide, all these ethical questions about technology is like another whole layer on top of everything else we've talked about.
It is, and Jackowski sees it as a major force shaping the future in both positive and negative ways. So, where do we go from here? Does he talk about, like, the fate of humanity itself?
That's what I'm wondering.
He does, and this is where things get, well, let's just say, kind of mind-bending.
Oh boy, buckle up.
Jackowski's predictions, they go beyond just, politics and technology. He starts talking about extraterrestrial contact.
Wait, aliens?
Aliens, yeah. And he links this to the evolution of human consciousness that we were talking about earlier.
Okay, this is getting a little out there, even for me.
I know, right? But stay with me. He's suggesting that humanity is about to take this huge evolutionary leap in consciousness.
A leap? Like, what does that even look like?
He talks about things like, people developing psychic abilities, heightened intuition, a greater awareness of our connection to, like, everything in the universe.
And he thinks this is all going to make us more open to contact with aliens.
Exactly. He believes that extraterrestrials have been watching us for centuries, just waiting for the right moment to, reveal themselves.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. Does he, like, describe what these aliens look like? Or why they're so interested in us?
He doesn't get into specifics about their appearance, but he suggests that this contact, whenever it happens, it's going to be transformative for humanity. Like, it'll challenge everything we think we know about ourselves and our place in the universe.
So, like, close encounter of the mind-blowing kind.
Yeah, something like that. He almost makes it sound like we're on the verge of this whole new chapter in human history, one where we're interacting with other intelligent beings from other planets.
Okay, I'll admit, this is pushing the boundaries of what I can wrap my head around.
It's definitely a lot to process, but it's also kind of exciting, isn't it?
I mean, in a way, yeah. It's a big leap from worrying about, like, who's going to start the next war to thinking about, like, alien encounters and this cosmic shift in consciousness.
It's a whole different perspective.
So alien contact, evolving consciousness, what else? Does he throw in any other, like, futuristic stuff, like teleportation or time travel?
Jackowski, he never disappoints. He does touch on those concepts.
Sure.
Yeah, he suggests that as our consciousness evolves, we might develop new technologies, things that seem impossible to us now.
So teleportation and time travel. Maybe not so far-fetched after all.
That's what he's hinting at. Like, we might be underestimating our own potential.
That's, wow. Even if we never actually achieve those things, just the idea that it's possible, it's pretty amazing.
It's about pushing the limits of what we believe, about embracing the unknown.
This has been quite the deep dive. From geopolitics to, like, the cosmos. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. And before we wrap up, I think it's important to remember, all these predictions, they're fascinating, they're thought-provoking, but they should be taken with a grain of salt.
Right. They're not set in stone.
Exactly. They're possibilities, not guarantees. Jackowski's giving us glimpses into potential futures, but ultimately it's up to us to decide which path we take.
He's not giving us a roadmap, more like a set of binoculars to, like, peer into the future.
That's a good analogy. He's encouraging us to think critically about the challenges and the opportunities that might be coming our way.
So, we've really gone through it, haven't we? Global power struggles, economic collapse, natural disasters, that potential spiritual awakening.
Quite a journey.
And then aliens and a massive shift in human consciousness. It's a lot.
Jackowski definitely paints a vivid picture, doesn't he, of a future where humanity is on the verge of, wow, some pretty radical transformation.
I gotta say, I'm still wrapping my head around that whole alien thing. It just sounds so, sci-fi. But Jackowski seems pretty convinced it's a real possibility.
And maybe not even that far off.
And maybe not.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is how he connects it all back to that evolution of human consciousness that we talked about. It's
Right.
like, it's not just aliens randomly deciding to pop in and say hello.
Yeah.
There's a deeper connection there.
Yeah, a kind of cosmic synchronicity.
Exactly. He's saying that as we evolve, as we become more aware, more intuitive, maybe even develop those psychic abilities, that's when we'll be ready for this encounter with extraterrestrial beings.
He thinks they've been watching us, waiting for us to reach a certain level of understanding, I guess.
It makes you wonder, though, why haven't they made contact already? I mean, if they're so advanced.
That's a good question. And what are their motivations? Are they friendly? Or are they, something we should be worried about?
Yeah, we're talking E.T. or War of the Worlds here.
He doesn't really give clear answers to those questions, which, part of what makes it so intriguing. It leads us to speculate, to kind of fill in the blanks ourselves.
It's like he's given us this puzzle, this glimpse into a future that's both exciting and kind of scary at the same time.
Definitely. And speaking of pushing the boundaries of what's possible, he also talks about, how as our consciousness evolves, we might unlock all these new technologies.
Oh, yeah, like teleportation and time travel.
Exactly. Things that seem like science fiction right now.
I mean, can you imagine? Just poof, you're somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hopping into a time machine.
It's mind-blowing to even think about.
Even if those things are, centuries away, just the fact that they might be possible, it's pretty incredible.
It speaks to this idea that human potential is basically limitless, that we can achieve things we can't even imagine right now.
So we've covered a lot. Geopolitics, economics, spirituality, aliens, even time travel. It's been quite a ride.
It has. And I think as we wrap things up here, it's important to remember that, all these predictions, as fascinating as they are, they're not guarantees.
Right. It's not like a set-in-stone future.
Exactly. There are possibilities, potential paths we might take. But ultimately, it's up to us to decide which path we choose.
Jackowski's not giving us the answers. He's more like giving us the questions.
I like that. He's prompting us to think about the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead and to make conscious choices about the kind of future we want to create.
And to be honest, that's what we're all about here on the show, isn't it? Encouraging people to think critically, to explore different perspectives.
Absolutely. We don't want anyone to just blindly accept any prediction, no matter how compelling it might sound.
Right. But at the same time, we don't want to dismiss these ideas outright either.
There's value in considering different possibilities, even if they seem out there.
It helps us to expand our thinking, to challenge our assumptions.
And maybe, just maybe, to glimpse a future that's even more incredible than we can imagine right now.
So, to our listeners, keep exploring these ideas, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep an open mind.
The future is out there, waiting to be discovered. And who knows? Maybe some of these predictions will turn out to be more accurate than we think.
Only time will tell. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.